So welcome everybody. This afternoon we're going to talk about co-management. We're going to talk about co-management, and from LIFE's perspective, co-management is very much part of what we're calling for in terms of access to resources and access to markets. The idea of participative management, fishers having a say in the decisions that are taking that affect them, but also that they're engaging directly with scientists and the authorities on who fishes where, when and how. And if we think of co-management within a defined area, within an MPA, then we're also thinking not just of conservation zones, but also of empowerment zones, where fishers can be empowered to become agents of change. And I think that's a very important element of what we're going to talk about this afternoon, is fishers as agents of change. Marta Cavalier, I don't think you need any introduction from me other than to say you're LIFE's Mediterranean coordinator and responsible for a program of work in the Mediterranean that's been going on since 2016 in partnership with the Marva Foundation since 2018. I'll hand over to you, Marta. Thanks.
So thank you all to be here. It's nice to see a full room. That means that co-management matters. So that's good. Basically, I don't think maybe we need to introduce the concept of co-management, but just I will refresh a bit. For many years, the tragedy of the commons has been the main idea dominated, and how it's been addressed. It's been like state control and privatization has been the only tools to really address this tragedy of the commons. No? However, the change of paradigm came also with 2009 with Governing the Commons and Ostrom's work, where she investigated that actually communities where communities have devised rules to govern the commons to assure its sustainability. So where there's community engagement, there's possibility to sustainability. And she drew up like 8 principles of for managing the commons, so it doesn't lead to tragedy. And this is very important because it means that if the community-based co-management can be able to achieve sustainability by improving the governance of marine resources. So co-management is simple as that, is having all the stakeholders around a table. But of course, this has not been simple to put in practice. And we at LIFE, we think always that it's kind of a plank, central plank for achieving this sustainability. But we knew that we couldn't do that alone, and we have worked closely with other organizations, with many stakeholders to try to make this reality spread over Europe and beyond. This is a project called Co-Management No-Take Zone, where these partners around here, we worked in the Mediterranean to promote co-management schemes and to make them a reality. It's been 3 years, well, 2 years actually, and I think a lot of work has been done. And it was in this, one of the activities of the project was also to gather the joint information and jointly reflect about co-management and the lessons learned we gathered from the field. We basically were looking at the sides of the project, but we tried to incorporate also the words or the reflections from other sides as well that are not included properly in the project. And so the idea is also to capitalize on this collective and local know-how on management from the side and have a picture of where we are, at least in the Med, in co-management. With the idea maybe that this will lead also to continue this joint work, because I think the joint work can really can be really important. And this is the focus group of co-management. The idea of the focus group of co-management has been with us a long time ago in Barcelona. In 2018, we gathered for the first time some practitioners of co-management, and we reflected. Some of you were there already. And we reflected on issue. We did a map there. But it's up to now that we want to strengthen a bit and open it to anyone that wants to join on this reflection. And the idea is first to develop and hone a common vision and terminology. Yesterday they were telling us, no, there's no agreed definition on co-management. And I think, well, Benoit will talk about this, but there's coming up a new idea, a new terminology on this in this group. To act as a network to document and share and analyze fisheries and promote cooperation among us, and create a toolkit and materials that we could use to keep improving on co-management development and setting of co-management schemes. And of course, shared advocacy strategy to make these enable policies to be a reality as well. So this has been a bit our work. We circulated a questionnaire among all the partners of this project and beyond to reflect on case studies and their lessons learned. Also, Benoit also interviewed many of you, the sites, to further understand about the main things. And today we are trying to share this space to also keep building on what we need to do from now and beyond. So with all this and some circulation of the report that is still drafted, we would like to bring this report to anyone. So it's the first step to continue our work together. So without further ado, well, this is the questionnaire, and it was reflecting a bit the terminology and definitions they have in mind, identify these key sites, where are they exactly, factors of change towards improved governance, the alignment with these Ostrom's principles, and the success factors, challenges, and lessons learned, which is, I think, is the key point to move forward. And that's it. So I leave the floor to Benoit, and he will explain a bit the results of these reflections and lessons learned from the sites. Over to you.
Thanks, Martha. So I'd just like to introduce Benoit. Benoit is a fishing skipper from the Mediterranean, but he's also an international fisheries consultant, and he has a background in governance at local, national, and international level. Very much engaged with local development projects, building a cooperative in his community, marketing seafood products, and looking at how to build capacity in communities and amongst. Many of you may know Benoit from when he was secretary of the Southwest Water Advisory Council, and I think you're standing in at the moment at the Long Distance Advisory Council. So he's a guy of many talents and working in many places. So he's the right man in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, what other than thank you. Hello everyone. So it's a small draft report we will issue after this workshop precisely, and the idea is to incorporate the comments you may have. So the idea was to analyze the results received from the online questionnaire live as circulated within this project Marta was recalling. And also we have decided to hold a few additional interviews with MPA managers and also fisheries managers and NGOs to have some more in-depth understanding of what are the triggers to shift towards more participatory way of management. That is to say, mainly how the users are really participating to the rules that affect them. So, well, I mean, to follow a kind of usual presentation line, and for sake of clarity, I precise the sources of information I have used. So this is this online questionnaire we were referring to, these interviews, for sure short literature review. The session we have today, I don't know what's time, but I will try to be quick, and my own experience on the issue. What do we agree as a co-management arrangement is the sentence you have on the screen. So a partnership arrangement between governments, local community of local fishers, sometimes also connected with NGOs and research institutions, and resource stakeholders to share the responsibility and authority for management of a resource. So as you all know, the usual way traditional fisheries management is made is you have a central authority, which sometimes consult the scientists on one side, some other times consult the stakeholders, but have the final say and have the final power to decide and enact regulation. So this is a bit painful for me. I would have liked you to participate in the room, but it was depending on the small app. I could not charge because I'm not reminding my password, of course. So I would like to know. I wanted to know where you are all coming from, and if it's okay for you, we will do it physically. So mainly, we used to have the four, group of actors you seeing in the map. So I would like to know among you who are fishers in the room, and you can add up. Okay, so that's a nice representation. Who are scientists in the room? Okay, that's interesting. Who are managers? Yeah, I knew you were going to be the only one. Thank you, Matthew. And who are representing NGOs, or widely speaking, civil society? You are representing double, you're having several hats, like many. So then my part of the job was to have a representation of all these sites throughout the Med. I'm afraid I can't, yeah, okay, sorry for that. So this is an interactive map you can find. So there is a link which is actually working, but not now. It is working. So you could simply go there and look at the different sites that have been incorporated in this map. And I've also incorporated sites that WWF is working on, and it was presented yesterday by Marco, I see in the room. So we have some sites where co-management is in place, actually very few of them, and other sites where you're seeing a progress towards co-management. So that is something completely available and completely shareable, so you can have access and add sites, whether you consider you are trying to enter a kind of co-management arrangement. So I hope it will be useful for next steps in this process. So what is the dynamic, to represent it very simply? So you have a starting point, which is very much depending on the local context, the local history, so many issues that make your place, specific. Then you have some triggering factors, that is to say, something happened that force or encourage people to move towards a different kind of management. And to be honest, often it comes from a crisis where you are facing, for example, drops in yields, in fishing yields, or threats to prohibit, for example, a specific fishery or a specific gear, and that forces the stakeholders and mainly the fishers to come to and look for a solution. Then, well, it's a bit, it may be not very easy to read, but I've just to formalize this, I've used what is called in the United Nations the theory of change. That is to say that you, from a certain situation, you are looking to how you're turning the problems into solution, and what are the factors that may help you to go towards this situation you are trying to achieve. But I've from the interviews, from the online questionnaire, I mean, we all know the usual drawbacks of traditional fisheries management. So inadequate top-down fisheries management measures, very not at all fitted to the realities of the field. Isolation of stakeholders working on their own, or even worse, competition between them, which is a usual scenario in fisheries. Widespread mistrust in the implementation of the laws, overfishing, unsustainable practices, deterioration of profitability. And the thing is to try to turn all these problems into solutions. And well, this is still something not easy to read, so I will just simplify that. I have proposed to put all these solutions as, a contribution towards implementing co-management. And for each solution, of course, you have different activities you can implement, as consolidating knowledge, and often in co-management you are grasping traditional ecological knowledge, or at least part of the knowledge the fishers have of the sea, which is very useful, because as we heard before, they are living on the sea and they are seeing, well, changes and evolution that are difficult to grasp many times by other participants. Well, you have to create what is called in many areas a co-management body, and you have to share the responsibility in this body. You have to follow what you are doing and check you are doing things right. And you have finally to achieve sustainable fishing practices, because that's the final outcome of this. And one of the interesting outcome in the sites I've interviewed or I've seen is that it's not always easy to qualify the increase in terms of fishing sustainability. Yet, in terms of markets and marketing of products, it was, in many cases, it was very clear that the simple thing of fishers going together and being able to market together or have collective strategy for the sales of their products have actually helped them to increase the value of the products they were selling. This is a kind of, let's say, sociological work. So it is also key mechanism of how to characterize this change. So you have motivation to go towards co-management, and for fishers, it's clearly to have a say in the decision-making process, whereas they are feeling often isolated and that they are not participating to the process. There are a lot of resistances. And the main ones that can be observed in many sites is the reluctancy of managers to delegate and to share the power. And I can quote, I don't know if he is online, but the case of Turkey, where they have prepared almost everything, but still the blocking point is that the managing authority, let's say the government, refuse to enact and give power to the management committee they have created, and that have gained support from all the fishers and all the scientists and also NGOs. So that is, I would say, that is often one of the problem, the main difficult problem, because it involves managers to really shift their position, whereas they were holding the power to be brief. And then what about the action that should be put in place? Well, there are various actions, but the ones I've quoted from the interviews and the online questionnaires: controlling the illegal fishing, because of course, if you still have illegal activities, it's putting into question the whole system. You need to fund this kind of arrangement. You need a facilitator. You need capacity building. All these kind of things. I think you used to see many of you. Well, some key lessons. So full inclusion of fishers. I think you would have much to say. A lot of you, we know each in our site some fishing organization, and they are also, well, let's say fishing organization and fishing organization. Sometimes you have very participatory arrangement where internally you have a fishing organization that are able really to speak on behalf and represent the voices of their fishers. And in many occasions, I've also seen regional, national organizations that are somehow filtering the voices of the fishers. And I think that's also why for example, is here and existing to represent voices that have been somehow lost in the process. Then we need transparency and dialogue, so it's a matter of trust, and we need to have objective and to see what we are trying to achieve. It's not only about meeting people and having a good atmosphere and knowing each other, even if it's a very interesting intermediate output of the process. It's not, I think, the final goal. So I want it because sometimes all these issues about governance are quite abstract and quite virtual. So I just wanted to quote some concrete examples and management measures that are applied in the field today. So you may have limiting efforts in terms of gear being deployed. You may have number of fishing days that are limited, closures in area. You may have innovative control devices, and I've quoted an example from Greece. You may have also innovative data collection and self-monitoring. So the usual still example of Torre Guacheto, where the fishers voluntarily are collecting data, and it's part of the right they have to access the area. And you have also many examples I was saying before of increasing profitability for fishers. Still, it's a question to you that I cannot ask really. This was about the concrete outcomes you think you could expect from a co-management arrangement, and this was for you to rank the several proposals. So I'm afraid I could not ask you to end up because it will be quite a mess. So I'm skipping it, unfortunately. And then just for you to know that, of course, there is a kind of gradient of co-management arrangements. So in the small study I've carried, you have enhanced co-management teams. And yesterday I noticed still Marco was quoting the Catalonian example, which is somehow completely aside, yet it is a model we are trying to pursue in this kind of work, but completely aside because for many reasons, there is the administration supporting the transformation towards co-management. There are yet sites where you see that structure have been put in place and slowly they have gathered people and proposed management plan or management measures, but yet they are not enforced yet. So that is a bunch of examples we have in the feedback we received. And there are other places where you only have kind of informal arrangements without formal recognition. It may have some effects and impacts on the field. So then still some reflection. I think I've talked about the facilitator role, which is very important. It may be a scientist, it may be a fisher, someone that is actually very convinced by the process and is tirelessly going to the fishers, going to the managers and trying to move the process forward. I mean, it is not an easy role. It is a very difficult role. You need to be completely convinced about what you are doing. You should not expect people to thank you, I think, in many occasions, but this is a key role. You need managers to share power. And one other question I'm going to raise at the end of this very small report is the impact on conservation, which is key also to assess the added value of these arrangements. And it is not clear, well, it's not clear at least from the very small work I've done. But one of the key questions is interlinkages with the wider marine environments, because all the sites we are seeing are very small sites, and we need to, if we really trust in this arrangement, we need to change the scale and also to see, well, to be able to have real impacts out of this process. So one of the proposal that was made in the questionnaire, the online questionnaire this summer, so 17% answers. I think it mainly because it was summertime, and of course we can count on the availability of people, but is that all of them were agreed that a kind of focus group should be maintained in the Mediterranean Sea for different reasons, to gather the stakeholders and practitioners together, both from the MPA and the fisheries world, because often we see that these are two different and separate tracks, whereas in MPAs you have a lot of experiences. But I'm seeing in my country, in France, for example, that, for example, fisheries management is not at all building on the experiences from the MPA, whereas MPAs are representing more and more space on the coastal area. So we have something to do to bridge these people and these experiences together. These focus groups could act as a network. And I think one of the major stakes ahead is to develop a shared advocacy strategy, because these management principles, these co-management principles, are not yet embedded in policies. It's very clear. I have checked this in France. I think the exercise could be done in other countries, and we have very few countries and areas where really you have the policies that is supporting the implementation of co-management. So that's about it. And of course, well, we try to remain always ambitious and enthusiastic. So, but for me, it's a very old story, because when I was beginning my career in the WWF, so 15 years ago, I'm not young anymore, unfortunately. My proposal was about co-management, and it was supported by the government at some point in 2007, and there was a decision to test co-management in 7 areas, and because politicians change, because NGOs change, because discussion change, we missed this opportunity at this time. So we missed this momentum, but I still think that it is the right way to manage fisheries. So, and I think it will change things well, drastically, even though at personal level, I know it is a very, very long story.
Great. I really appreciated the way you presented the theory of change. I think there's very helpful way of this. I don't know whether you're familiar with that, but for me, that's some of the concrete examples you gave, and the need for people who are dedicated and political opportunity. We missed that opportunity, and that's again the generation. Yeah, we've got a short opportunity now for some questions, reactions to what Benoit had said. I don't know whether anyone here wants to add anything to what Benoit said, or some issue he raised you'd like to pick up on. Bryce, you'd like to say who you are and then ask your question.
As it's friends. I have questions. Generally, the literature, one of the main obstacles for co-management is the size of the fishery. So, what is your feedback on this?
Yeah. Well, I think you can find some co-management arrangements if you consider that the sector is participating in other scales. Somehow it will be a bit provocative, but if you go towards the National Fisheries Committee and you consider the commission they have for NEFOPS, for development, they have a kind of, well, I will not say it's exactly co-management. It's fishes talking to fishes, and sometimes you have presentation from scientists, you know, sometimes you have the administration coming, but you do not really have this kind of equal footing participation. I think that one other example I may have in mind is work we have done in the Advisory Council for the Southwestern Waters in the past on anchovy. We really have Spanish fishers, French fishers, scientists, and the administration was coming because the fishers needed to make a deal because the fish was closed. That's where I was about the situation of crisis that it's. And in that case, yes, you have a kind of management arrangement. It would need to be looked in a very detailed way, because the problems you have when you are going to work on bigger fisheries is that you usually do not have the fisheries. You have the representatives, and the representatives are doing their jobs and they're much needed. But sometimes you have all these kind of filters that at the end make that you are losing the voices and the real concerns from the field. So that's the main difficulty, I would say, and I think we should imagine in that cases new ways to really represent the collective interest from the field. I think that's from new technology, from different tools, we could probably think about how we could really have voices from the field. So that's a clear. So to answer, yes, I see some co-management arrangement, but I have some doubts in many cases on the fact that representatives are really honestly representing the concerns from the fish. That's because then you're entering in politics and the balance between organization and many things that come into play, and that should not.
Someone at the back, sorry, say who you are.
Okay, I'm Marshall Esteves from Setman in Vigo State, and we had a lot of experience in management, and we know from history that making the system robust, we have faced some situations like the economic crisis that hamper systems already in place and ruin everything. So paying attention to those critical variables of the system works. It's pay off for everyone, it gives great outcomes, but what attributes should we say are core to ensure that it's robust, face those external factors that may destroy what it takes so much effort to explain.
How will you guarantee that it is robust throughout time? Yeah. It's a tricky question. Well, I think it's somehow the examples are quite recent, so we don't know how it will evolve in the fishery. We are always quoted this was set in 2014, like that, so 8 years ago. It's pretty much robust. I expect that when you have this kind of arrangement and when a crisis arises, people are for support, and this platform may offer the support they are looking for. Then they have close relationship with managers, then they have closer relationship with scientists. So I would tend to say, but maybe that it will reinforce the platform in crisis. Much more adapted.
You want something after that? Okay.
I have a problem with government, and I think the question you was really interesting. Like, what's the size? No, area. This is really tricky. I think because it depends. Like, for example, in the case of the government, depends on the competence you have. Like, for example, we are autonomous region, so we only have competence for like small scale fishery, or So, for example, it would be ideal to have a management on the other, because we have like total and octopus, we also have small scale fishery. But we only have competence on on interior waters, so that's a trick. That's something that has to be active. And also to be like it's difficult even to achieve like consensus between fishermen from the same year. So imagine like the fishers is different. But it's a really, I think it's really important. Like, would be really fantastic. Like, unimaginable more. Like, control, like the species, like no matter which year or which region.
And that in the principle, so I have not covered the principle because it was technical and it's a bit technical in my small report, but the 8th principle is about interconnecting with the wider system and the wider institutional system. So there is really a point about governing commons to connect with the wider areas, wider geographic areas. That is a remaining point, but my experience is still that most often the managers are just consulting the fishers because they have some pressure from the European Commission on reaching MSY, or because there is something happening and they are consulting through procedures uses, but it's not a proper. I mean, it's not a proper, building of representation and a proper participation from the field. It's just a short-term consultation, which is limited times. Whereas we need to build this and take some time to build. I mean, dialogue around a bigger area. That's for sure. But I'm not this great. I think there are, and I think you have some tools to go in mind. So I think it's doable.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Ben Claesson. I'm from Sweden. I'm a fisherman. I've been involved in this kind of cooperation and co-management for a couple of years, not the latest years, but I give you an example and say that you should be very careful. For about 10 years ago, we had a project that had management in our region. Not a big area. It's about 100 kilometers on the prices. And we had a very strong struggle with the angles and the leisure against professional. And that was so. And what we failed with that didn't reach any co-management area, because when they come to the conclusion of what the kind of decisions you should make, it ended up in protected areas, and we asked request to protect from what. And the very important issue was that the authorities should make a strong decision and take a decision for temporary ban, and the co-management should not be adaptable. But the just one decision for a ban or protected area should be forever. And that was a disaster. So that's why we didn't come to a progress. And that's what I want to tell you, all of it that should be in this process. Be aware of and say the demands that must be adapted. Because if you have one situation, one decision, is a long-term problem in the future. And I also say I have the benefit for being one of the speakers, and we give you an interesting story about the development of fishery now in our region. Historically, how this kind of comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Benoit. Thank you very much. So we now move on to our next part of the session, where we have some panelists. I'm going to introduce you one by one. You just raise your hand so you can see who you are. So first of all, we have Matthew Gastina, who's a fisheries biologist, and he's a manager at the Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture, and he's leading the initiative to establish a co-management scheme area of water. Then we have Eva Sauter, who's from the Catalan authorities. She's a marine scientist, and she's engaged in rolling out of the programs which regulate management fisheries governance scheme in Catalonia, and she's a member of several management committees. We have Antonis Petru from Cyprus. He's a marine biologist and scientific advisor to the Pan-Cypriot Association of Professional Small-Scale Fishermen, and he's been working with LIFE now, I think, since 2018 as project manager on a co-management project in Cyprus. Then we have Ana Macarena Molina Hernandez. Macarena has been a LIFE project officer for the Alboran Sea area. Recently, she's from the Balearic Islands, but for many years has been active fishes in the Gata marine area in Almeria to have a management plan which makes sense from the fishes point of view. Federico, unfortunately, is sick. He's down with a fever, which is a shame because it's a very interesting project in Pantelleria Island in Italy. We have Nora Rosari, who's the project coordinator at the Snow Change Cooperative in northern Finland on the lake. Very interesting tree. Seamus Bonner from the island of Arranmore. Seamus is the secretary of the Irish Islands Marine Resource Organisation, which brings together communities from across Ireland and the offshore islands. He's a member of Life's board of directors, and I think it's fair to say Seamus is passionate about small island communities and is committed to local development, very active in those areas. Last but not least, we have Marco Constantini, who is the Regional Fisheries Project Manager, WWF's Mediterranean Programme, part of the Marine Initiative. Fisheries biologist with a strong background in NPD management and conservation biology, and again, activist to advocate for fisheries. We have 3 questions which I'm going to ask panelists to respond to. In your work, unfortunately, I made a slide, but in your work, you've come up against barriers and had to deal with certain challenges. Establish co-management in your region. In a few words, please explain what are the main benefits of co-management, the main barriers, challenges, and what we've done to overcome these barriers and meet these challenges. So I'm going to call on you in the order I called you out. So Matthew, you're first if you like. I don't know whether you want to come up front or stand up or.
I think in our case, Brian, basically the benefits of co-management are that ultimately we ensure the transparency. In our case, I work at the Department of Fisheries, so we are currently implementing a co-management project in one of the MPAs in Malta. So I think what we benefited a lot from was that we bridged that gap that there was between department and fisheries. There was always a good relationship. However, I think this project helped to improve that relationship. So technically the benefits are twofold. So you have the benefits for the Department of Fisheries, okay, where basically through the relationship with the fishers, okay, the department is collecting data and their traditional ecological knowledge. On the other hand, the fishers are also benefiting from the project because the department is providing them with an opportunity to be part of the management process. So those, I think, are the main benefits we had. With regards to the barriers from our end, I think, again, in the beginning, a couple of years ago, I think the relationship between the fisheries and the fisheries and the okay, I can stand here. I can stand here. So I think the barriers between that I think we encountered in the project were that in the past the relationship between the department and the fisheries was a bit it wasn't as strong. It's still not as strong, but it was there was always that element that the department is a controlled department, and you also have the fishers who obviously do not like the restrictions that we come up with. However, I believe that it wasn't only done through the co-management project. I think even through the work done through different units, okay, through the different onboard observations they carry out, where you have that sort of, you're building a rapport with the fisher. I think slowly this barrier is being overcome. With regards to what can be done to overcome these barriers, I believe that it is vital that we put ourselves in the fisher's shoes. So it is very important that we show empathy as well towards the fishers. There was also this is a comment that I received a lot of the time is that we always work behind the desk and we never go out. I think with the co-management project, I think we proved that we actually went to the different ports. We asked them a number of questions. We didn't just go on the port, went in their garages, we went on their vessels. So I think there was a sort of relationship that was formed. And I think if you actually go down, not go down, you stay on the same level that they are in, you can actually overcome all the barriers that you may encounter throughout the implementation of co-management.
Thanks, Matthew. Yes, coming later. Yeah, no, then people online can see it.
Just stop me when I talk. Okay, hi from me. In order to answer the question, I have to give you a little bit of an insight of where I am and what I do and what the place basically that's undergoing co-management. So we're in the eastern part of the Mediterranean. It's a very small place. The Kakoscali NPA, because it's what we're talking about, is a very small. I like the way my friend from Sweden said before, it's small, 100 kilometers. NPA is 1 kilometer by 3 on the surface. And it's an NPA because down, it goes from 0 to 150 meters within 50 meters. It's a vertical wall basically on this sea mount, surface islet or whatever. So the fishermen were not really interested in fishing. It's because it's obviously very difficult. It's very difficult to take your gear up. So when we suggested as an NGO to them to create the NPA, they were very skeptical. But then again, they said the only people who fish in this place is people who live in this town, sport fishermen and people who don't know how to fish. So we don't really care closing. It can only be beneficial to us. So within a year and a half, we came to an agreement. We took it forward with fishermen, the classic bottom-up approach. It worked perfectly. The fisheries department was very happy. Oh, the fishermen want the NPA. Why? We're asking the question why. So, so we've closed this place, and it's quite an isolated area of Cyprus. So there's not a lot of control. There's a lot of illegal activities, sport fishermen, from fishermen themselves to a certain extent, and from other users as well. So the main problem here in this NPA is the control of anything, of any activity, of anchoring. There's rich Posidonia meadows, for example, which are protected, and anchoring should be regulated and managed. So the next step, with the help of LIFE, and was to create a co-management situation. And the fishermen here saw the benefit in that they could get involved in control of the area. This was their initial response. Also, they had this feeling of ownership because it was their NPA. They created it. They suggested it to the government. They had this real feeling of ownership, and it still exists today. And I think this is one of the main reasons we are still running the project, although we've run into various problems. Some of the problems have come from the governmental side. Up until a couple of months ago, when these nice people from Malta visited us in Cyprus, it wasn't taken seriously. The government didn't look at it as a serious thing. They have heard about it in GFCM, it's 30-30, whatever, 2030 strategy. They've seen it written a few places, but they didn't take it seriously. They couldn't understand the concept of how do I give over control? How do I give over power? How do I give over legislation to a bunch of people? Not a lot, about 25 people. It's funny when I say 25 people, because the day that I made a meeting like this and asked fishermen to come and talk about co-management, 7 people came. The next time I made the meeting about co-management, I offered €5. 35 people came. Next time it was €50. There was 125 people in a meeting, and half of them were not fishing. But my father was a fisherman, my uncle was a fisherman, this kind of thing. So the point that I'm making, although it sounds like a joke with money, is that if you want fishermen who are trying to make a small living with small euros, 70 euros a day, 60 euros a day, 100 euros a day, to participate in these kind of managerial collective approaches, co-management for their benefit, you need to have some money in the project somewhere. There needs to be money. It's not that not everyone gives their time for free. Although Benoit here was saying that everyone is involved, and we have this idea that fishermen want to be involved. We're talking about it as if we have a positive agreement of fishermen. It doesn't happen in every situation. A lot of the fishermen in my place said, but why? Why do we need to get involved in policing the area? I don't fish there. I don't fish in the area. I have never fished there. I don't fish there, but you want me to control or will fish illegally. So there are these kind of thoughts as well that we have to take into consideration, that do the fishermen really want this, want to be involved? And then I go back to the initial thing I said, ownership. They like the idea of ownership. They like the idea that they're involved in controlling something that it's theirs. So various other problems, including the resistance of the government, as I've said before, lack of legislation. The government wants control. It doesn't know anything else. We've shown them the way. We've given examples of Catalonia. We've given the examples of other places, but it has to be gradual. It really has to be very, very gradual. And right at the end of our project with LIFE, having a lot of work to do now in convincing people, in making a draft management plan, if you want, making a draft committee, all within the next 2 months. And then the government comes and says, but I don't want too many people involved. And have all the people involved that have an effect on the somehow or benefit or affect the MPA or the thing you're trying to manage. So then you have to break it down into technical committees and plenaries and all this, and they have to understand this. And then start talking about veto power. We're not in the UN here. It's a piece of rock, 1 kilometer by 2. Fish in it. It's not like a big thing. Still, they're very afraid to let go of the legislative power. How to solve these issues and how to overcome it, I think it has to be gradual. Not be from one day to another. Today you're in control, tomorrow you're not. It has to be a process. And because in parallel to this process of creating these things, the legislation has to be created as well. We don't have a way right now in the legislation to give powers for management to fisheries. So it's all up in the air a little bit. But we're trying to suggest to the government various ways within the legislation as it stands right now, to change or to put articles into part of legislation that they can change overnight by ministerial decrees and not have to change regulations in the legislation, which takes a very long time in my country. And the last thing I want to say is that one of the big concerns of the government, when I went 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago, whatever it was, to present this again for the 5th time, was funding. They said, but how can we fund it through where? EMFF, weak part of the MFF. So no one really knew where the funding, which no one has talked about, funding for co-management, would come from. So then we talked about whether it would come through the still called flags, or whether it would come from the measure of collaboration of scientists with fishermen, or where it would come from. So that's another thing we should think about through co-management. Some money has to be there for running. For example, we want to create some rangers in this place to help the authorities in policing illegal activities. Who's going to pay them? It can't be a government funded, because it would take a ridiculous amount of paperwork and bureaucracy to hire someone in the government, kind of thing. So these issues have to be of two. We're in a good position, much better than we were 2 months ago. The government in Cyprus has understood that it's a necessity for them now to do this. So they've said, we don't know anything. I'm telling you for 2 years, don't want to listen. At least we're somewhere. I'm not going to complain about that. But the important thing is what everyone has said. And from the beginning, this is the most important thing. When the fishermen feel that it's their thing, it's they're investing in their own future, in inverted commas, whatever that means. And it's not just another thing the NGO guys have come down to tell them. It's not just another thing that the government has forced them to do. It only works, the way I see it, if the fishermen feel that it's theirs.
Excellent. Let's come up and
Fisherwoman. Yeah, so hi everyone. I'd like to share some examples or some experiences from. Yeah, sure. I will try. Oh yeah. So I'm sharing our experiences from Lake Puruvesi, which is in eastern Finland. And first, I'd like to mention that the context of Puruvesi is very different from the Mediterranean or other seas. Overfishing, for example, is not a problem, at least yet, in Puruvesi Lake, and that is partly thanks to the local fishers who have come together to defend the fish stocks and their fishery. We don't officially have a co-management scheme in Lake Puruvesi, but I'd like to share an example of a successful situation where the fishermen managed to have a say regarding the governance of the lake, and that is regarding trawling. So trawling by today does not take place in Lake Puruvesi, and that is thanks to the fishermen who came together and they decided that, okay, so there are various companies from outside who are trying to apply for trawling permits to the lake, but that would mean, according to them, the destroyance of their fish stocks and their traditional livelihoods. So they came together and established a negotiation process with the state, and they were kind of lucky because the state actually listened, and the state said, okay, well, we will prohibit trawling at this lake. And but that is not for good. I mean, that is not forever the decision to prohibit trawling, because it's a discussion that is on. Okay.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. So that is not forever that the.
Just for the online.
It's just, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So it is not said that it will be forever that the trawling is prohibited. It's a constant threat because there are less and less fishers who practice the traditional seine fishery in the lake. So less and less people who are fighting for or resisting trawling in these discussions that take place every 4 years. But anyway, I just wanted to share this as a successful example that could possibly lead to also developing a co-management scheme at the lake, because there are already the negotiations with the state that have been successful. So maybe it could be developed into something that the fishermen are at participating or as equal partners with the state developing the entire management plan of the lake. But yeah. But of course, we witnessed that it would not be an easy task because there are some challenges, and that is our fisherwoman Carolina is going to share some of those challenges that we have witnessed.
Hi everyone. So the biggest challenge is the uneven power relations between the state and the fishermen. But apart from that, I'd like to mention that power relations within the fishing community itself have posed to some challenges to collaboration. And for a brief context, the traditions of seine fishery in the Lake Puruvesi date at least back to 1300s, and most of the local fishermen are from families that have practiced the seining for generations. And like Brian mentioned, we are from an organization called Snow Change Cooperative, and I am a part of a young fishing crew, and we have started maybe like two years ago, the winter seining. And we are trying to respond to the challenges of a vanishing tradition, and by learning from the older fishermen who are willing to teach us. And it hasn't been that easy to gain an acceptance and respect from the fishing community. We have witnessed several tensions and conflicts within the community that partly have their roots back to several generations in history. And however, we find that the roots of the conflicts are not only in the fishermen themselves, but also in the top-down governance of the natural resources that have narrowed fishermen's power over their resources. These tensions, in our viewpoint, weakened collaborations that would be needed in order to stand strong when facing all the common challenges, example, the trawling at Puruvesi. And I would like to end by posing a question that what kind of processes would be needed to ensure the fishers themselves are able and want to work together to defeat the common challenges.
Very much. Thanks. Macarena, would you like to come on? Macarena will speak in Spanish and
sorry for my English, but I have good friends that make for me. Mi nombre es Macarena, vengo de una reserva marina diseñada desde la administración para el bien común. Hace 27 años y no funciona. No ha cumplido con su objetivo de proteger los recursos naturales ni proteger la forma de vida tradicional, que es la pesca.
Sorry. So I come from a place called Cabregata, which is an MPA that actually has not been served the common good, neither the repopulation of fish stocks, neither the conservation of the fisheries.
Por tanto, la cogestión supone una esperanza. Este área marina tiene 27 años y necesitamos que funcione. Necesitamos recuperar los recursos naturales, necesitamos conservar a los pescadores. Y creo que el principal beneficio de la cogestión es que nos da esperanza en que se pueda hacer de una determinada manera, y esa esperanza viene porque en esas mesas, cuando nos sentamos a hablar, están las personas y los colectivos que más conocen el territorio, que mejor conocen las corrientes, que mejor conocen la especie, que mejor conocen los cambios y que están todo el día en el agua y en el entorno y saben perfectamente cuándo se avecinan los cambios. Creo que el principal beneficio va a ser eso, que todos los que viven y habitan y que conocen ese espacio se van a comprometer en cuidarlo y mantenerlo para las futuras generaciones.
So for us, co-management is a hope. We've been working for 27 years, so it works. And that means that we want the resources to come back, and also we want the fishers to have a living. And this hope, it comes because we have the feeling that we will be able to work in a different way. Both because in the table of discussion, there's going to be the people and the main people with real knowledge and that really know the place, the local reality, and also that they have all day at sea, and they are trying to make it to survive. So the main benefit is that will come, I think, is that they will actually fishers themselves, they will commit themselves to also protect the area.
Por otro lado, la principal barrera que nosotros nos hemos encontrado en nuestro caso, que parece ser que se extiende, es la falta de experiencia previa. Aunque es algo que los pescadores quieren implicarse en la gestión de su área marina o de su caladero, no saben qué deben aportar a esa, porque por un lado tienen muchas cosas que contar, pero no saben, no llegan a entender muy bien cómo eso se va a plasmar en una normativa, qué consecuencias va a tener. Tampoco saben exactamente qué se espera de ellos a la hora de redactar. No saben si son ellos quienes deben liderar o si... Entonces, ese tránsito hacia este cambio de paradigma, hay que cambiar la forma de pensar y para nosotros ha sido la principal dificultad. Parece que queríamos resultados demasiado rápido y nos hemos dado cuenta de que no, que la cogestión necesita sobre todo dedicarle muchísimo tiempo, dialogar, y eso por parte de los pescadores que, bueno, que han sido los que han tomado la iniciativa en este caso. Pero es que nos hemos encontrado que los científicos tampoco saben muy bien cómo encajar su trabajo en esto. En nuestro caso concretamente, la administración ni siquiera ha querido estar presente, ¿vale? Entonces, nosotros estamos trabajando sin contar con la administración porque queremos empezar nosotros y llevar a cabo experiencias que puedan ser exitosas, contar cosas y obligar, entre comillas, o convencer, mejor dicho, convencer a la administración de que debe estar en esa mesa y que tiene que darnos una oportunidad. Pero durante mucho tiempo hemos esperado que por el hecho de tener ya una reserva declarada por el Estado y donde estaba implicada también el gobierno autonómico, tomaron la iniciativa y nunca han querido. ¿No? Y entonces fueron los pescadores los que la hicieron. Sorry.
So the main barrier, for another hand, the main barrier is the lack of experience, previous experience on co-management, because actually the fishers themselves, they know actually how to build this. They are not used to it, so they don't understand what is the expectations that they need to be on the table, what they have to do exactly. No? So, and actually, we realized actually that it's normal because it's a transit and a change of paradigm. So somehow this we thought that it would be very easy for us, but it's really actually not that easy. We cannot expect results very fast, and we learned that the co-management needs time and needs dialogue and needs a lot of conversations and building trust, and this is a key lesson learned. Also, this is from the fisher side, but when then talking to the scientists that we were talking to, they had the same thing, the same struggle. They actually not know exactly how to do it, and we are learning together to go ahead. And in our case, actually, the administration never wanted to sit on a table to talk about that. So this is why we somehow started ourselves with the scientifics and NGOs, trying to do something ourselves, even though we didn't have the administration. And with the time and some proposals done and agreements, we want to convince the administrations to give us an opportunity, because, and we took this step forward because we've waited for so many times, being a reserve ourselves, that the administrations will take the lead on this, but never did. So this is why we decided to step forward.
Y por último, ¿qué podemos hacer para romper esas barreras o esas dificultades? Estoy convencida que lo mejor es el intercambio de experiencias, que podamos reunirnos, que nos contemos casos de éxito y casos de error, que aprendamos de cómo tenemos que repetir las reuniones hasta que salga bien, o sea, que le dediquemos tiempo. Creo que la cogestión necesita tiempo, y para nosotros, una de las veces que estábamos un poco bloqueados, le pregunté a Marta que cómo podíamos hacer y me dijo, pues trabajando. y al final es la única forma de hacer la cogestión, porque estamos ensayando cosas sin tener ninguna certeza de cómo acabarán, y la única forma es que trabajemos. Entonces, si tenemos dudas, nos reunimos. Si seguimos teniendo dudas, nos reunimos otra vez. Si alguien se ha cabreado porque la reunión dura mucho, pues nos volvemos a reunir. Intentamos hablar de todo. La cogestión no es magia, no resuelve todos los problemas, pero los modelos de gestión que hemos tenido hasta ahora tampoco lo han resuelto y nadie lo ha cuestionado. Entonces creo que tampoco es justo por parte de la administración que nos pida a nosotros la solución final cuando ellos con mucho más recursos no lo han conseguido. Entonces creo que tenemos derecho a intentar otra forma, porque además son nuestros recursos y es nuestro trabajo lo que estamos intentando ayudar.
Okay, so I think the way to change this is a bit the exchange of experience. This is key for us, and talk to each other and talk about the successes, but also the mistakes and how we can learn from each other, and get meetings and time and dedicate time to it. And sometime I asked Martha how we should deal with this, and I just said, well, just work, and that worked. No? So, and this is true. I mean, there's also this uncertainty, no, on where this process will go, and we have to talk as many times as we need. Co-management is not magic, a magic hood, but the last models didn't work. So I think it's fair that we give us a try to this new approach, and we hope that it will work.
Muchísimas gracias. Yes, I'd like to come up and say a few words. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Brian's introduced me, but just to remind you, I'm based in Ireland off the northwest coast on a small island, and I am secretary of a producer organization, small scale fisheries producer organization, and we have members across the offshore islands of Ireland. We don't have co-management in place in Ireland at the moment, but I just wanted to speak to you a bit, I suppose, around the barriers that exist at the moment. We have done some work on, in conjunction with a researcher, Dr. Ruth Brennan from Trinity College in Dublin. It was a European funded project over 2 years, and it looked at governance around small scale fisheries on the islands and in Ireland in general. As a producer organization, typically we deal with European regulations like the Common Fisheries Policy or the CMO regulation. It's Common Marketing Objective, I think, regulation. But there are others, the likes of the Marine Strategy Framework Directive. There's a Marine Spatial Planning Policy Group. There's MPA designation regulations, and there's a new one with binding targets called the Nature Restoration Regulation, which is currently being developed at a European level. So at the moment, there's no real coherence between the common fisheries policy and these environmental regulations. So there's no joined up thinking really between the different departments in Europe. And in Ireland, we have the same barrier. The common fisheries policy is under the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, but all the environmental regulations and laws are being handled by the Department of Housing. And there's not a whole lot of working together between the different departments to try and come up with an organized plan to look at what could be done and how the gap between environmental and fishing, how could that be done? So co-management was an obvious one, and we've been looking at it since probably 2016 when we, with LIFE, visited Galicia in Spain and looked at what they had done with their co-management, and it seemed to be it wasn't perfect, but it seemed to give a lot of potential. It gave a voice to the fishers, gave them an equal seat at the table, and that was really important. Working along with the sort of scientific community and bringing their traditional knowledge along and sort of complementing the overall management. So I suppose the findings from the European study that we worked on, they can be found at belongingtothesea.com if you want to have a look. But there is a lot of resistance to change. Found that as part of the findings. So I think there's a lot of work to be done, but for government, I think if they can see something working well elsewhere and they can use it as a template, I think that makes it much easier for them to make those changes. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Eva, who is going to give us some reflection on the fact that in Catalonia, it's the authorities who have taken the lead. Generally, we find that it's the NGOs or fishers or non-state actors who are leading on co-management, particularly in Catalonia. It's the authorities who've done it. And so we're asking you, how can you use your example to inspire other authorities, convince them that co-management is the right thing, or is your message to them?
So I'm not going to say anything that it's new, like everything has been said, but I can talk about the experience we have. And I think it's key, like that the stakeholders, the fishing sector, it's involved. Like we are managing the fishing resources. So it's key that they are involved in the decisions. So that's for me, like the key thing. We as managers are going to make the regulations. So they have to be part of the decisions, not to manage. Also, we have found after like since 2018, that was the decree in co-management. We have seen like on the several committees that empowering the fishing sector, it's also like very important because it implies like co-responsibility and trust, and they are more involved. No, before like the government was putting rules and they were like maybe following, maybe not following. No, but now they are empowered and they have the same weight to reach decisions. So now they are also like, if they don't follow the rules, they are responsible because they have agreed these decisions. So this is one key thing. Also, we think that management has to be adaptive. Like there's no sense that regulations are like immobile, well, that cannot be changed. No, we are living like in environment, it's changing like every day. Socioeconomical aspects are changing every day. So we have to be like, regulations have to be like agile. And that's key also. And that co-management, as you may know, like one of the goals is to create a management plan, not that it's a regulation, that it's an order. And this order, we want to to put the main point of the fishery resources managed, and afterwards, with something more, with a regulation that it's more agile, to be changing it. For example, this year there is high catches of octopus, so we can put maybe a seasonal closure, less months, and next year. So it has to be really agile, the regulation, and it has to be adapted to the conditions. Also, it's really important to give enough focus to socioeconomical aspects. We have to do programs to see how it's our fishing sector, and also data collection programs are also key for. We have to know how is our fishing resources, and also I would say I'm supposed to give a lot of to talk about the main things, no, and to how do you say, to promote, no, that all the governments put the co-management, but also we must say that it's time consuming. It's a lot of time. We have to go on meetings with fishermen, with fishers, sorry, with fishing guilds, with scientists, with NGOs. We have to achieve also, we have to go achieve consensus, that it's not easy. It was easier before, when we decided, and that's all, no? So it's a lot of time consuming, but it's really worth it. And what we have seen, and also, I want to point out, someone has said it before, sometimes results are not immediate. So if you put a co-management committee on the fishing resource, don't expect to see results maybe next year. I mean, on fishing resource. You have to be patient, but I think it's the way to go. I really think, because it's, and also working with NGOs, with civil organizations, with fishers, with fishing guilds, scientists. We have a lot of knowledge. We have acquired a lot of knowledge of the region, of how it works, everything. So I invite you to try co-management.
Marco is going to Marco is going to look at this issue of scaling up and formalizing. Lots of little areas are often informal. So Marco, if you could, or whatever you want to tell us.
No, it's exactly the points.
Can I ask you to sit down?
Yeah, I will.
I
will. Was just listening you.
Yeah.
I think that in the Mediterranean, we just ended the pioneer phase of management. Because if you look at the map presented by WWF or the map Benoit this morning showed us, I mean, almost all the map is covered by little dots everywhere and are management in place or ongoing. The point is that we reached a level in which we have to enter, or better, to exit from the replication phase. We are just replicating sites, and we need to have decrease at national level. And this is key. We need legislation. Without the legislation, we are not moving forward. This is the key point. And at the moment, there is the Catalonian decree. There is a decree in Croatia. There is the Portugal decree. In Greece, they are discussing. That's it. There is the regional plan of action on SSF asking for implementing co-management at least in every MPAs by 2028. But still, we need to work in order to have a legislation and standardize the legislation through the GFCM process. This is the next steps we all should do. The second thing is that sustainability or management cannot be reached at zero cost. Right? We need money. Right? We need those. And I tried to intervene this morning, but I was not one of the
the plan interveners, that this morning the European Union presented us some absolute numbers, but I like numbers, but I prefer percentages. This morning, they told us that 443 million of the MFF were dedicated to community-led local development, which is the pillar to support the implementation of the co-management. If we look at this in terms of percentages of the entire envelope, because the entire envelope of the MFF was almost 8 billion, so it's 5.6%. That's not enough. I mean, we need money to implement, because it's time consuming, and time consuming means money. We need scientists, and scientists, they like us, they like working in co-management, but they need money to implement research. So this is another aspect. So the first one is the legislation. The second one is the financial support. And the third one is something that we are not yet entering into the point, but is important. I studied a lot Catalonia and Spain, and I compare the results there with what is taking place in the other places. The point is that you in Catalonia or in Spain, thanks to the Cofradia, there is in place a sort of a spatial, an agreed spatial tenure. You know? Fishers from a Cofradias are not fishing into the area of another Cofradias. But that's not true in Italy, for example. You can go everywhere. You can go fishing everywhere. The same in Croatia. I'm from an island. I'm in co-management. And one of the biggest problems of the co-managers is that, yes, I'm in Telashica on Dugi Otok, on the big islands, but the other guy from that islands there is coming and is fishing into my area. So, or we go to combine co-management with MPAs or fishery restricted areas. We can call it whatever we want. But the third thing that we have to look in order to scale up management is this spatial agreement on where the co-management can be implemented. So for me, for the next phase is money, space, and legislation.
On time, I don't know whether we have a few questions or clarification or to say something to build on what's already been said. But what I heard during this last session is something that Benoit referred to earlier, which was you need people who are passionate. That's great. Thanks very much for that. Barry, let's say words. So Barry is from the island of Skye,
especially Scotland, and I work with the Scottish Federation. And I was going to make the point about spatial planning and management. In Scotland, we have two main fisheries, land sea networks fishery, targeting the field, so that high employment fishery, and we have a top target 6 species directly. We feel that we should have more field fishing because it generates more revenue and has a smaller environmental impact. However, we can't compete directly with product. We need spatial management. Government has been very key. Co-management for them means us fighting it out of the trawler, can't deal with it. Within the field sector, or few restrictions, management field sector. Within the trawl sector, they can be trawl where, cannot agree with each other. And until there is spatial management where we can trawl, management and the idea is impossible. So I just want to say, I think very, very important that we spaces for management to happen. Without that,
you need physical space, but you also need the political space, and you need different actors to come together within that space.
or some different actors to have, and some sectors to have co-management undermines the ability to say this is your sector space, your sector space now, we can have co-management.
Right. Any other points, anybody? Sorry, yeah.
One second. because
Galicia.
Yeah, no, you referred, and I thought that was versa, to the fact that scientists do not know how to command. But like we go into the natural science, and they know about how fish and how the environment behaves, but you have plenty of people that know how humans behave, and they have expertise in being able to create incentives for you to have better meetings, more effective, and for people that apparently will never get anything from it, find something to work with. Because in some areas there are no possibility to split. You have to learn how to do it together. So go and you're sure in any of the areas you have social scientists that you can rely on to work with the human side of the management and make it more effective.
So, without more ado, I go have some lunch, and then we get this afternoon, right here, right time, right place. Small scale fisheries, it's incredible.